Good evening. We want to thank you for coming. We are here representing African American Cancer Initiative. We'll start by everyone introducing themselves.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christy Ewing.
I'm Dr. Rodney Nash.
Alternate Lincoln.
I'm Dr. David Glover.
I'm Dr. Abby Glover.
Dr. Gary Williams.
Phyllis Rosen.
Dr. Don Romero.
We have come together to form a public-private partnership to focus on providing care and treatment for African Americans, as well as doing some research. So we're going to turn it over now to Rodney.
It's my pleasure again to be here today with you. Again, my name is Rodney Nash, and I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of a company called GD Biosciences. And our interest is in trying to identify cancer stem cells, using them as an actual model for drug development. We have done so with glioma, multiform, a very nasty brain cancer, also with desmoplastic melanoma, and also with hormone positive receptor breast cancer. And our goal, our belief is that focus is not really placed so much on the cancer stem cells and how they are involved with triple negative breast cancer and other cancers also, but specifically today triple negative breast cancer. In addition to that, the cost that's involved with drug development is astronomical. A lot of it is on the front end, and if we actually had better models to help develop these drugs, would not be as expensive as they are. And that's our main focus.
A few months ago, I was charged with the task of bringing together teams that could do research and the personnel together, and this accumulation of healthcare professionals is charged and ready to do the job of innovative cancer approaches.
All of us in some way have been impacted by cancer, either personally or with some of our family members. So we all have a personal story and a real commitment to cancer and making sure that we can do all that we can as healthcare providers.
We know that, if we look at, how cancers are so aggressive in the African American community, we know that there has to be some kind of genetic difference. And when you look at the clinical trials that are out there right now, 95% of the participants, the cancer participants, are Caucasian. Only about 1.3% are either African American or Latino descent. And so, there's only 2% of the research that's going towards these really aggressive cancers. As Alton said, we all have our own personal stories. I am a survivor of breast cancer. I had triple negative, which is the most aggressive breast cancer that a young woman can have. And so I'm very passionate about research in this area.
So only 2% of the research now being done is directed toward African Americans?
Or non-white.
So, many people think that billions are being raised for cancer research. It's not a new phrase, cancer research. What's unique about this? That we're being left out of the research?
And a lot of it is not necessarily that we're being left out. I think in the African American community, there's skepticism. We're scared to participate in trials, or a lot of research companies don't think that that makes a big difference in the way that these drugs work. If you look at the past few drugs that have been made over the last decade, there have been some good cancer drugs for breast cancer, but they've all been treating, they're drugs that treat the hormone positive cancers. They treat the most aggressive form that most African American women die from.
And also with that, the difference also what we're trying to do is having an actual cell model from the perspective of GD Biosciences. Our approach is to develop this cell model that the drugs can be put on in a dish, and we can get an immediate within weeks response with regards to toxicity And a lot of the studies out there, of course, they start with animal models. Animal models are just between 5% accurate. And typically it's rodent models, of course, but as far as an actual model that represents, in this case, triple negative breast cancer, it just doesn't exist. It does not exist.
I had a sister died of what you just said, triple negative breast cancer. So you mean all that she went through it was for naught? I mean,
It was not for naught. I mean, I'm here, and you know, I survived it. I've been cancer free for 13 years now, and so, but you know, there's probably better treatments we just haven't discovered yet. And so, since this is the most aggressive cancer, it's something that we need to take a look at. So, my grandmother died of breast cancer. I got the same drugs that she got, and she had it 20 years before I did, and so not much progress had been made in 2 decades.
Examine the big picture. We try to look at the treatment of cancer in the present and in the future as how we're treating diabetes and hypertension. Diabetes and hypertension we technically don't have cures for, but patients are still living and we're still managing those disease states. We try to do the same thing in cancer. When I say we, I'm saying the healthcare profession in general. Cancer theoretically, and a lot of people still think of it as one step away from the grave. And in some instances, it is, depending on the type of cancer, number one, and depending on when it's detected. There's some cancers that do better than others. We mentioned the triple negative breast cancers. But we have some cancers, for example, prostate cancer, which is very curable. However, African American men have a higher rate of prostate cancer, and we have a higher incidence of death when it comes to prostate cancer. So that has to be derived from several factors. One could be, just lifestyle or socioeconomic status. The other could be access. But then there's also a component which we touched on earlier, which could be the biological component. What's actually going on within the DNA to cause some segments of the population to have a higher or more aggressive type of cancer. So overall, we want to recognize traditionally what's been going on. For the past few years, it's been stated that we have made a lot of progress with regard to treatment of cancer. Most patients are living longer. The death rate has decreased. However, there are some segments of the population that we still just don't know about, and we figured that this is a complex problem that's going to require a complex solution.
One of the things we're going to be doing is trying to mobilize African American healthcare providers to actually become ground troops and get into the communities, as opposed to waiting on African Americans to come to us, to the healthcare centers. We're going to be going to them. We've got plans to have some mobile clinics where we're going to actually be in the communities, providing education and helping our people to realize that prevention is the best thing, but you can't prevent something if you don't know, if you don't get the training, if you don't get the education. So we're going to be doing grassroots education in terms of educating people, and that's what makes the private partnership work so well, because we're bringing all of our resources together in a collaborative effort to actually take service to the people as opposed to waiting on the people to come to us.
This is the first of its kind, and does this collaboration signal a crisis? I mean, they see you like doctors together. It seems like there's an alarming crisis out there. One would think.
Well, I like to answer that. We feel the need for our community and as well as other communities to have awareness. And so before it becomes a crisis, let's start now, all ethnicities.
Our theme is moving in a new direction. Because if you continue to do the same thing, the same way, you're going to get the same results. I teach nursing for Georgia State, and I have students that actually work on the oncology floor. You've been on an oncology floor and you see that many people who are really sick and suffering from cancer. And a lot of them, as Aaron said, access. We know that the Affordable Care Act, a lot of people who did not have access to insurance now have it. but still it's an educational process. And even with that, how affordable does it really become?
The problem is well documented. When you go to the national conferences, particularly the National Medical Association, I would say 50% of the presentations of the word that you hear the most is disparities. When we talk about also the National Cancer Institute, they have a center for the resolution of cancer disparities. So the problem has been documented. What we're trying to do is add another component to the solution.
You say disparities mean between
Right.
the communities?
Right, between several communities, and they document data with regard to the incidence, that is the new cases of cancer, the current cases of cancer, the death rates with regard to cancer, as well as the survival with regard to cancer, those 4 categories.
And ours is higher?
And ours is higher overall, number one. Number two, when you look at certain segments, for example, breast cancer, the incidence is higher among Caucasian women, but the death rate is higher among African American women.
Across the board?
Across the board.
Our death rate with regard to
Yes.
cancer is higher across the board.
Yes. With regard to
Really?
prostate cancer. Oh, yeah, yes. It's been documented. With regard to prostate cancer, our incidence is higher and our death rate is higher with regard to prostate cancer. In my opinion, prostate cancer is theoretically, to a certain extent, a curable disease if caught early. Not all cancers are curable, but this is one that has a high cure rate if you catch it early. Why is that? Those are the questions we will attempt to answer.
With regards to triple negative breast cancer, the reoccurrence rate in African American women is almost double of that in Caucasian women. And with regards to the Affordable Care Act and the cost of drugs, there's an article that talked about by 2020 the cost for cancer, period, hospice, loss of work, everything, you're looking at over $150 million. But if the drugs keep increasing the way they are, they're saying about $208 million. And it's out of control. They named drug companies. There was an article that came out last year. The top 100 drug companies in the U.S. Alone, not in the rest of the world, from 2003 to 2013, you're looking at over $800 billion that were spent. It was, to be exact, it was 800. It's so staggering to me. 808 million, 878 million. I won't ever forget that number that was spent in that 10-year period. 60 some odd drugs have hit the market. How many of them are still out there? And their cost is astronomical, with the cost of a drug being anywhere from as cheap as just under 400 million to as expensive as 5.3 billion. And it's because you see the one drug that makes it to market, but you don't see the other 10 that didn't make it, but we still carry that cost. Even drugs that are already out there, that have been out for years and years, the cost of them being used today, it's 2 or 3 times what it used to be. But the question is, why is that? And on top of that, the exact same drugs in Europe, half the cost. Half the cost.
Well, that's what your harshest critics suggest, that cancer research, the industry is a trick. And many black people believe that.
Well, part of it also is, even with the government, with regards to the government buying drugs, with regards to government programs, I'm forgetting that's the Medical Management Act, I think it was back in 2003. This act made it where the government buys drugs at full price from drug companies, no negotiation. These are all lobby groups doing this. It's handed down, it's passed down to the consumers. You're looking at early 2000s, the cost for cancer drugs per month about 5,000. Now it's over 10,000. The drugs that were released or FDA approved in 2012, there were 12 of them, all of them over $100,000 a year. And you're looking at it in the African American community where you may not have the type of financial support that may exist. One thing that would help is to have models that would help in drug development specific to these particular women that get this cancer.
So that over $100,000 a year to
purchase the drugs, over $10,000 a month. And it's not like it used to be where insurance is picking up the vast majority of this, or Medicare, Medicaid. Unfortunately, a lot of people succumb because they don't have the money. It's almost like you have to be rich to get treatment.
And that's the real tragedy, I think, of cancer. If you happen to be socioeconomically affluent, and if you have good insurance, if you have a good job, if you have a good support system, if you have a working spouse, then you will probably do a lot better than someone who does not have those resources. The chairperson of our board is a 2-year cancer survivor, but it has been a rough 2 years. A single mother with 3 children ended up with breast cancer. And even though it was caught early, it still was very aggressive, and it went from the breast to the thyroid. So it's been a rough 2 years for her. And even though she had a job, even though she was a nursing faculty, because she was so sick from the medicine, she just wasn't able to work. So she ended up having to quit. But once you quit, then your income stops. Or if you get long-term disability, that's only 60%. So one of the things we also want to do is to try to provide, in addition to education, some type of financial support. Cancer is difficult. My mother died a horrible, horrific death. But at least with my background in healthcare, I knew what was going on. I could explain and interpret to my other siblings who did not have a clue. There are so many families who don't have those type of resources. So what we want to do, as I said, is to mobilize people all over. We see this as a national project, international. Our colleague down here on the very end can share with you what's happening in his country and how what we do here can be replicated and duplicated.
Yeah, actually I'm from Kenya, and in recent months, the cancer incidence in Kenya has been reported is so huge, and we believe the report is as a result of the diagnosis which is getting to be introduced into the country. So we don't know how many of those have died in the recent past that were not diagnosed. As somebody mentioned, I've also had experience in my life with my grandmother dying out of ovarian cancer. So all of us have at one point been close to somebody suffering from cancer. And as Dr. Williams mentioned, some of these are actually curable if caught early. But then how do you catch them early if you do not go for the diagnosis? And if you go for diagnosis, what are some of the indicators that we can use to show that in future, somebody having this particular indicator has potential of having this type of cancer, and therefore we can develop remedy before it happens, if that's part of what our goal is.
If I can add also, with regards to the cost, again, for drug development, our goal again, if we're able to make a specific model, and I know it sounds like personalized medicine, that's where everything is going anyway. It's going to personalized medicine. And at one point, the flu shot was probably personalized medicine too. You can get it now almost free for the drugstore. The one thing I like to emphasize is just the initial startup cost for drug development. If you are using a mouse model from the leaders, this is data I got from the leaders here in the U.S., Jackson Labs and Charles River, providing this information. Mentioned that to have a designer mouse, just to start off, doing at $50,000 to $90,000 for some designer cancer mouse, just for making a mini, not for the entire pack of mice that you're needing. And once you breed them up, and that's going to also take you 16 months to get, first of all. So 16 months to get the first 2. You have to breed them up, paying employees for these mice to keep testing, make sure they are proper. The short of it is you'll end up spending anywhere from $500,000 to $4 million over a 2 to 4 year period. You've not put one drug on them.
Where is this money going to come from? How are you going to raise? I mean, research is
Very expensive.
very expensive.
Right. And that's where we're working with different people and partnering in the raising of funds right now, absolutely. Showing the community that we want to be present, that we are there, and that we are going to be working with the public and with other financial supporters as well, absolutely.
Would you expect the funds to be raised largely in the black community?
Not necessarily, but we're hoping to have a presence there, absolutely. But the thing about it though, it's not just, we're talking about African American and women with triple negative breast cancer. White females, young white females also get triple negative breast cancer. And in addition to that, also, in doing experimentation, we have to have populations that represent everyone. And what we're going to learn is that we probably have a little more African American in us genetically than we may realize. But we have to have white females, we have to have Hispanic females, we have to have Asian females. We want the tissue samples for comparison. So really everyone benefits.
It sounds like a tall task.
It is a tall task, but when good people do nothing,
That's
evil
right.
flourish.
That's right.
And so we can be intimidated by the tallness of the task, about how much work needs to be done, or we can be very positive, and because we're all blessed. All of us here were blessed to be able to go to college and to become educated. And so we've got to give back. And part of giving back, part of being blessed, is looking out for those who are the least of us, those who need the help the most. So that is what we are committed to, not worried about the money shall come.
Absolutely. And it is a tall task, but it thinks, bigger things have been done before. And with all of us here together, I feel almost like, I hope I'm not infringing on copyright here, like the Justice League, I feel like superheroes over here. And I feel like we all have our strengths. Individually, clearly is not enough.
But collectively,
Collectively, and
we can move mountains.
we can, absolutely. And there are other partners that aren't up here today that we work with that also help us. And it's a challenge that I look forward to, absolutely.
So this is unique. There's no group like this in the country before. You guys are the first to do this.
As far as it goes.
As far as we know, we've looked, we've researched it, and we can't find this model. Have any more questions?
Sorry, I couldn't get that. This is a good story.
Well, we thank you for coming, Mayor. It's been our pleasure to have you here.
Well, we're trying to get some other media too. I can't explain their actions.
The Hawk family, break.
It's busy.
It's a good one to fight outside.
Maybe they're recovering from
Kentucky,
Yeah, the fight.
And I would think about it. Sundays are. You might want to do this again. It's a good story. Thank you.
I have a question. I was thinking about what I got. Okay.
Ask one.
You all too.
Anything you want to go on the record saying? Yes, we're moving in a new direction.
Make some differences. You will make some differences.
We appreciate y'all coming together. It's an awesome opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna give you-
Before Maynard leaves, you want to